You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler, and we get to the heart and soul of business and the people that make it happen.
Yes, and we have, hopefully you've been listening to the last few podcasts, finish the sentence, Rona. They're all kind of related. We talked about return to office, we talked about middle management, and now we're flipping to the other side of being in HR.
Right.
And I think it can be a very slippery slope. I have a lot of friends in HR.
What can be a slippery slope?
You know, whether is HR a good thing or a bad thing? And, there are two sides to every story. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Well, HR really, I'm not even sure why it was created. I think developed is to handle laws, to handle make sure that people are being treated fairly under the guidelines of the laws and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it serves a good function there. It makes sure that people get what they need. The companies are doing what they need in terms of the employees and things like that. And then they also became a communication source. So HR, human resources they were kind of the go-between management or the executives.
The referees.
They were the referees.
Yeah. And it's changed so much. I mean, I think they mitigate risk a lot, for the companies more so than the employees. And I think I think it depends on the company, on the culture.
Right. Well, I was just HR a little. So what started this is that article that you saw. Yeah. And the title of the article is HR is not your friend.
Is not your friend, yeah.
Oh, do you remember who wrote it?
I don't, off the top of my head, no.
Anyway, and the idea was that, look, HR is really there for the company, which pays their check.
I want to interrupt. Yeah. I do remember that she is a former HR leader person who became an employee advocate because of the bull that she found on sides of HR. So, this is from her personal experience, right, not HR across the board, because you and I have met a ton of HR people who are more middle ground.
Right. And the culture of the company really matters on those things. And there are companies that it's all about the company and you have to swear allegiance to the company. Right. And if you're not fighting for the company, you're the enemy and they'll get rid of you and replace you.
And that's, I think I've seen a lot of HR people have that as their number one fear. I have to acquiesce to what the company wants if I want to keep my job versus, well, this doesn't make sense, so I need to be the one to stand out and say, well, perhaps we need to try something different, right, because what we're doing isn't working.
Right. And one of my clients, anyway, they'd hired me for for a couple of years. I was working with them 3-4 times a year. And so on this last time, it was in 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. So we hadn't had all these dramatic changes about, people pronouns and all these other activities and who can do what and what you could talk about and you couldn't joke and all. None of that had happened yet. So this is all this is the pendulum swinging now. This is where it started, I believe. So anyway, I'm in there and the HR signs the agreement for the president. And she goes, okay, you do a story and you tell the story and you've got a funny line at it. And the line was basically, it was a surprise line and it always got a great laugh. She goes, I don't want you to do that. You have to figure out a different line. Well, at the time, I wasn't thinking about it that much, and I couldn't come up with a line. And anyway, so I'm going to do the program, and the VP of sales comes up to me and goes, hey, you're gonna do that line, right? I said, no, HR told me, forget HR. Okay, don't worry about that. You do the line. Hey, you're working for my department. Mm-hmm. So I did the line. And at the end of the program, HR, as I'm ready to leave, everybody's thanking me, having a great time, got a bunch of people coming up. She comes up to me and she goes, I told you not to do that line. I said, the VP of sales said to do it and it's his company and his thing. And she goes, well, this is the last time you'll ever work for the company. And so what I didn't know is behind the scenes, the president of the company was getting into a war battle with the VP of sales. And the reason was he was asking sales to do stuff he didn't want to do because it would have been bad for the company. And it's terrible president. Awful. Okay. He went to another company and drove it to bankruptcy. Anyway, tanked it. Except this HR person now had a power base. And it wasn't about the company. It was about her and the power base. And so that's where, and it's not just HR, it's everybody. In organizations, power becomes the target. When power becomes the objective and having more power, that's when things start to get real unhealthy in organizations.
Yeah. And, I find most of the people who hire me are HR people, and I certainly appreciate that. And I have seen one or two times when someone who's not the HR person want me in, who's, a VP, they saw me speak and she's awesome, we need to have her. And maybe the HR person wanted somebody else. So they're a little resentful. And then it takes a little sales on my part to, look, I know I'm not your original choice. How can we make this work for both of us, sort of thing. So it's, and it can be a little bit iffy. So and it's, to your point with, confidentiality with them is not always what it needs to be. I've heard stories of, well, I went in and there was an issue and I was talking to HR and then they used my words against me.
Right. And that was in the article too.
Right. So you have to be, careful. And, what you say to HR, I think it's important in the issues to stay objective.
And it's difficult for them to do.
Of course
that
it is.
Because
it's really hard.
They've got the same, a lot of them have the same biases, the same myopic vision of what's going on. They don't understand finance. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand culture in an organization. Mm-hmm. And so if they don't
HR you mean?
HR needs to have awareness of all these areas because they all impact. The accounting department has its own culture. Sales department has its own culture. Shipping, warehouse, all their own culture. And HR has to deal with those and in the context of that culture.
Yeah. And I think it definitely depends on the size of the organization, how much they're aware of and can help that particular culture. I work with I have a program called Unleashing Creativity. And the way I see HR is that they are and they can be, and I think they have to be change makers for the organization because they're really the only department that can see everything and how it goes and how each department is relating to the overall culture. And they can be cultural change makers if they want to be.
Sure.
And that, I think, will also change the opinion of the employees versus upper manage argument.
Well, HR is oftentimes in charge of training, and training is changing a lot now. How are you gonna deliver training? How are you gonna make training valuable?
They're going to use play, aren't they? And that will make it much bigger.
So, and if somebody doesn't understand, this is where it relates to finance. If you don't understand, you're not going to get a return on investment in training. You're going to get an investment in your people that should eventually turn out. But, that's a whole ROI thing.
Yeah.
So here it again, HR, first of all, they're in the spotlight because they're often involved in things that involve somebody's career or their life. So that's an intense emotional battle going on. They also have to be kind of on the cutting edge of all the changes going on socially, what's acceptable and what's not, and how to deal with it. Although I don't think they do. See, and that's the problem. They think they need to be current. And I think they just need to have good, solid values. The problem is what defines a good, solid value. I would expect people to show up, work, do a job, be honest, be transparent. You make a mistake, do that. A lot of companies, that's the last thing you want to do. I'm not going to take a mistake. I'm going to let somebody else take the mistake or something else. A good friend and acquaintance who was a director of HR for a huge biotech company in the East Coast, Boston area. He said, look, my job is to land the plane safely. And I thought that was a great description. So how do you land the plane? How do you balance? So landing the plane safely means you're looking out for the organization, the culture. You're also looking out for the passengers on the plane to try and keep them well. The passengers in general, does that mean that somebody may not get injured in it? No, somebody may get injured in it. And so it was good overall. And the idea was, how can I help you? And he was really good with empathy. So when somebody was getting fired, he said that was the time. I had to give the bad news. I had to tell them about it. They would come in and they'd sob and they'd start complaining, and I'd have to redirect them and say, look, I'm here to help you. We're here to do the resources. We're going to do this and this and this. What I'm not going to do is sit here and listen to you badmouth everybody for the next 45 minutes.
Right.
And, that kind of clear thinking, straightforward messaging is very valuable in HR. So, again, these people have to be really good at skills. They have to have negotiation skills, persuasion skills. And I don't know of a lot of them that get that.
I happen to agree with you. I have found, especially in smaller companies, that the position of HR is someone who is just kind of thrown in there. They want to be promoted from another position, and there's like nowhere to go. Well, why don't you be our HR person? Because we don't have one, and they're basically thrown in, sink or swim, and they don't have all the skills. Whereas you go to a Fortune 500 company or the larger one. I have a very dear friend whose name I'm not going to mention, who was just retired from a global organization, and she traveled all the time, and she did see both sides of it. She saw it's human resources. She saw the humanness of what her people did, as well as what the overall culture and processes and demand of the business needed, and that is very rare.
Yeah, I think that I think the main point is, and this was in the article as well, and you and I talked about that, is you've got to be fully aware when you're dealing with HR that they have a role, and part of that role is being the policeman.
Absolutely.
Or the police officer.
Yeah.
And
they're not your best friend.
No, and they're also their hands are tied on certain things.
Exactly.
You break the law, it doesn't matter how much they like you.
Yeah.
Rules
are rules.
Rules are rules, and the company has rules.
Yeah.
And some of those rules are based on opinion, and some of the rules are hard and fast rules.
Absolutely.
There
we go. Yeah.
And so you've got to understand, anything you say can be
used against you in the court of law. That's right. Anyway. And it's nothing personal. It's just business.
And for the CEOs and the executives team, you need to really, I would, especially with what's coming down the pipe over the next 2 years, you should be investing heavily, and this it serves me, obviously, or everybody else, investing heavily in the education of HR. They should have a plethora of studies that they can go through and become masters at.
Yeah, very good, very good. And if there are HR people listening, please give us your feedback. Let us know in the comment section. Do you agree? What are we missing? All those type things. And while you're at it, like and subscribe so you can hear more stuff.
Yeah, and Rona, aren't you going to London in March to do a big HR?
I am. Oh, okay. Yes. This is. I don't know if this will be on by the time, but March 5th and 6th, I am in London, giving 2 programs at HR Vision, which is
that wasn't a commercial for you. I was just saying you're going to be speaking to the choir.
Yes, I am.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Very, very good. No,
I'm making it a commercial.
It's not going to be. Yes, you always do. It's anyway.
It's not. Yeah. This will probably be after. So
it's going to be after.
I rocked it. I did a fantastic job. Okay.
Okay. Good.
That's it for us. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
And this has been Biz-Souls.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts, Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.